Three Jews as inspirers of Turkish nationalism. Turkey was another of the first Islamic countries where the school of nationalism found its way. Bernard Lewis, the well-known orientalist, confesses that three European Jews inspired the spirit of nationalism in Turkey. 6. The first person who tried hard to kindle the flame of Turkish nationalism was Arthur Lumley David, 1811–1832. He was an English Jew who traveled to Turkey and wrote a book called Preliminary Discourses, in which he tried to show how the Turks were a distinguished and independent race, superior to the Arabs and other Oriental races. Lewis writes, "The book of this English Jew made the Turks imagine themselves as having a distinct nationality and independence. Before the spread and indoctrination of Western ideas, no sign is seen of nationalism in the Ottoman Empire. Even until the beginning of the present century, the Turks did not consider the Arabs as aliens, and the Arabs looked upon the Turks in the same way. The Arabs were content to be included in the Ottoman Empire on account of being of the same religion, and the Turks respected them because a one-air culture, and knowledge of Arabic was considered a sign of learning. Even a sultan like Abdul-Hamid was surrounded by Arab counselors in his court, the likes of Abol-Hoda and Ezzat Pasha. In the revolution of 1908 against Abdul-Hamid there were at least two Arab officers, named Aziz Ali Mesri and Mahmud Shaukat Pasha among the leaders. But the book of the said Jew gradually convinced some self-sold and dependent intellectuals and politicians like the leaders of the Young Turks movement of the superiority of the Turkish race. In 1851, Fuad and Jodat Pasha translated most of David's writings into Turkish. In 1869, another writer, Ali Savi, published a treatise in Turkish which was an imitation of David's, speaking of the glorious past of the Turkish race. This was one of the first writings in which nationalism was propounded, and it was something quite unprecedented in the Ottoman Empire. As Lewis says, thus the Turks discovered their nationality through the West and copied the writings of the Westerners. 7. David Leon Cohen, a Jewish French writer, was another man who greatly contributed to the expansion of Turkish nationalism. In 1899, he published a book called Introduction générale à l'histoire de l'Asie 8. In this book, he writes of the racial superiority of the Turks and of their epical records in history. This book was translated into Turkish in the first decade of the 0th century in a large number. Professor Khadouri and Bernard Lewis believe that the said Jew inspired the pan-Turkism of Young Turks, who started a revolution in 1908. In addition to the above book, Cohen published several epical stories on the past glories of the Turks. Clearly, the main aim of this Jew in his eulogy of the Turkish race was to rouse their racial prejudices and weaken their bond with other Muslim nations. He was not content with writing only, but also formed societies of exiled Turks and Egyptians in Paris and tried to lay the foundation of nationalistic movements in those countries. 9. But the person who had the greatest role in the creation of Turkish and Arab nationalism was the famous orientalist, Arminius Vambery, 1832–1918, the son of a Jewish Hungarian priest. He published many works on the necessity for the revival of Turkish nationality, language and literature. His works intensely captivated the attention of westernized, so-called enlightened Turks and incited their patriotism. He was closely acquainted with the Turkish statesmen and politicians of the first rank. 10. One of the main aims of the Jews in inciting nationalistic sentiments was to pave the way for the occupation of Palestine. The Jews, in their unsuccessful contact with Sultan Abdul-Hamid to secure Palestinian territories for Jewish emigrants, came to the conclusion that the only way to fulfill their dream was to overthrow Abdul-Hamid and break up Islam and Arab and Turkish unity. Under the cover of nationalism and through encouraging the creation of the Young Turks movement, Zionism first succeeded in deposing Abdul-Hamid, imprisoning him and laying the ground for inciting differences and enmity between the Turks and Arabs. These plots of colonialism and Zionism gave birth to the Young Turks movement, which resulted in the revolution of 1908 and deposal of Abdul-Hamid. The Young Turks, who executed the Zionist scheme, embarked on a pan-Turkish policy based on a belief in the superiority of the Turks. So they adopted an anti-Arab stand, closed down Arab cultural societies and began acts of discrimination against the Arabs and non-Turks, a conduct which was in line with the direct plots of British colonialism in rousing Arab nationalism.